Thank you for tuning into Radicards.com. And this podcast, we have Mr. Ryan Daly joining us again. If you haven't heard before, if you're new, Ryan Daly is a recovering Nomar Garcia Parra collector and presently collects vintage Nolan Ryan. Anyway, so Ryan will be joining us to talk about some points around the hobby and around the sport of baseball today. So, Ryan, thanks for joining us.
Hey, thanks for having me back. It's always fun.
It is fun. It is fun. Oh, before we start, though, I just want to ask, I invite my listeners to share how they feel about these podcasts. Do you like them? Do you not like them? You're sort of indifferent. Would love to know how you feel. Post a comment below or wherever you're reading this, if it's on the blog or on YouTube. Anyway, post a comment and we'll just get right into it here. Jump right into it, Ryan, with Juan Soto. What's going on?
All right, so Juan Soto, arguably one of the biggest stories in baseball this week. He was called up by the Washington Nationals, widely regarded as like the number 2 prospect in baseball behind Vladimir Guerrero Jr., who's still in the minors, unfortunately. He came up, his first home run, I think, the day after he got called up. So he's already raking. He's 19 years old, hits left-handed, very similar to a similar left-handed batter who came up with the Washington Nationals named Bryce Harper. So both young guys, and I think the Nationals have him batting in front of Harper. So it's kind of cool to see 19-year-old Juan Soto get up to hit, and then Bryce Harper get up to hit. And Harper was just in Soto's shoes, 5-6 years ago. And we all remember the tons of hype around Harper in the hobby. I mean, he's probably one of the most hyped prospects hobby-wise of all time. So Soto, I'm really not familiar with how his cards have been performing before or after his call-up. I'm sure there's a lot of hype now on the market. And, I mean, do you remember when Bryce Harper was called up? Remember what the hobby was like back then?
Well, I remember in 2010, Harper was in the 2010 Bowman Chrome set. But he had stuff that was, you could pull out of some 09 Upper Deck products and, a variety of different Upper Deck products that year. And I remember he followed right behind the Strasburg hype. When Strasburg, had the Tommy John, that was people, they stopped collecting Strasburg in a large way, and they started collecting Bryce Harper. And then the following year, it just kind of built on itself. They made like front cover or Beckett magazine. And it just kind of carried on from there. But he's really, made a name for himself and has done really well for himself and really carved out a nice, personal brand, like just as known as like as this he's turning into this all-star player. But going back to kind of what you said about Juan Soto, hitting in front of Bryce Harper, then that would mean that the Nationals understand that Bryce Harper is a power hitter and can get around the bases. So if we load the bases ahead of time, we have a chance for more runs. So I think putting Juan Soto in front of Harper is actually a good idea. It's a good decision from a strategic standpoint. But yes, the hype around Harper has been significant. And, he's kind of like a fan favorite now. Like he's a hobby favorite now. Like I don't know anybody who collects that's not excited about pulling a Bryce Harper card.
Absolutely. And I mean, it's such a small sample size right now. We've got 3 or 4 games of playing time for Juan Soto, but he's hitting 500. He's got a home run under his belt. And if he's already hitting number 2 in the lineup in front of Bryce Harper, he's obviously doing something right. And I really don't remember over the past couple of years hearing his name on, the guys that like to prospect. Sometimes I'll read their blogs, and this is a name that maybe I overlooked, but I really just don't remember hearing about it. The next guy we're going to talk about, Gleyber Torres, obviously I've been hearing about him for a couple of years. Vlad Guerrero Jr., I've been hearing about him for a couple of years. Huge card prices for those two guys. And Juan Soto, I'm just sort of like, this guy came out of nowhere. Yet he's like the number 2 prospect, already doing really well. So yeah, I mean, he's fun to watch for sure.
So you might remember in 2016, I think it was the Trevor Story hype.
Oh, absolutely.
So here's a guy who had a block of great performances, and the hobby just went crazy for his stuff. Crazy. And the following year, nobody cares. Kind of sucks, but that's like the nature of sports, right? Like that's the nature of collecting. We're going to be excited about guys that do well, but we're really fickle in a lot of ways. You know, we're not going to be there to support them when they're not doing well. I mean, that's hard to. It must be difficult when you're an athlete to understand how the market reacts to. You know, they love you when you're doing well. They don't like you when you're not doing well. You know, they're okay calling you names when you're having an off day. You know,
Yeah, it's
it's
tough,
rough.
and I think we feel the same way about the prospect cards. And Trevor Story was the guy that had an amazing, probably couple months of baseball, and then I think he broke his wrist or he broke his arm, and he's never been the same since.
Yeah.
And people spent thousands of dollars on Trevor Story rookies. So I think you and I are more of the mindset, okay, this guy's in the Hall of Fame. Now I'm going to buy his rookie card. Or this guy's got a proven track record. Now I'm going to buy his rookie card.
You know,
The prospecting stuff is such a gamble. It's really hard to say who's going to be hot and who's not.
well, okay, so these are all good points to talk about, right? That the human form, the human body is organic, and as such, it degenerates over time, and so you're gonna have plays where you might get hurt, and you need to go on like a DL for a while, and then you come back, and you might get hurt again, but you have to kind of expect that players, because they're organic, they're gonna get hurt from time to time. It just happens. But the hope is that they can come back and continue performing at some competitive level that makes them, a lot, helps their team produce results throughout the year. And then you realize, like, yeah, like Hall of Fame players got hurt all the time. I mean, like Mickey Mantle's knees were always a problem, but he's one of the greatest hitters of all time. You've got guys whose, their pitchers and their elbows blow out or whatever else, but they come back and then they're still great pitchers.
Right.
So it's almost a lot about the health management piece is so important. Like making sure you listen to your body and take time out when you're hurt,
Mm-hmm.
and not try to stress or over push yourself. But if you're like me, if you collect like I do, I collect in a very weird, almost atypical way. I wait until, either like you were saying that they're in the Hall of Fame, or I wait until their career flops so much they left baseball. And then I buy the card at a lower price because it's a good talking point for me, and then I'll remember when they were prospects.
Right.
Like, man, do you remember when Ryan Leaf was like the guy to get?
Yep.
But nobody cares about him now. It's like, why would you buy that? Well, it's like, well, it technically turns into a commodity at that point. Like, I can't get my money back. I know that. It's like going out to eat. You buy, you eat, and then it's over. You can't invest that money. It's gone. It's you just you threw it out, but for a good cause because you were hungry. So with cards that won't turn any profit whatsoever, I accept that, and I realize it's okay to buy stuff you just like. Just buy what you like. Don't worry about trying to return it around and try to make a profit. Just buy what you like. If the guy didn't pan out, who cares? If you like it, get it.
That's a good rule to follow. And I know a lot of guys liked the next player on our list, Gleyber Torres.
Yeah.
He's had huge hobby hype around him for several years now. And he's finally sort of made his debut this year. He's got about a month of playing time under his belt. And really good numbers. Small sample size, just sort of like Juan Soto. But he's playing in a really tough environment. New York's probably like one of the toughest sports environments you can play in as a young player. And he's thriving, playing second base, teaming up with Didi Gregorius, who's playing shortstop. So it's a really solid middle infield for the Yankees. And these guys are young, and they are under team control for a while. And it's just fun to see the young, kind of homegrown type talent play for the Yankees because we're so used to seeing the Yankees go out and buy the free agents, and they're kind of letting the young guys run the show this year, and it's really fun to watch.
Yeah, I mean, this is a good point, right? Like, develop in-house talent. You talk about this stuff in business all the time. Is like, where do you find talent? Well, we have it right here. You know,
Yeah, you got to develop it.
we develop it in-house. That way, it's a cost savings for us, both in time and money. We don't have to go and look for it, and we don't have to pay for it because we know that talent's not cheap, right? So if we have guys in-house that, like, let's say, you know, our receptionist is a blogger. All right, great. Well, our company needs a website built in some CMS our receptionist knows. Let's put him on board or on the team, or let's have him manage a team and develop those skills so that he can contribute to the overall goal of the company. And then maybe he's, you know, exceptionally proficient in the craft, and we can promote him into some other executive position. And, you know, so I feel like there's so much talent within. If you just look at who you already have, you know, look at your network, look what you have already, the access to the resources you already have. And I think that's a more efficient way to operate as both a team and as a business, because teams are runs, they're all businesses. So I think it's smart of the Yankees to operate in this way. It's very non-George Steinbrenner, but I think it's, you know, that era is, you know, we're past it now. We're ready for, you know, some more innovations and process efficiencies and cost savings and things like that. And plus, it's fair to these young guys to develop them, to give them a chance to really kind of grow in and build that, you know, that internal stakeholder relationship management piece. These guys can now grow with the team instead of being, you know, play with the team for a while and then being sold to the Yankees later at some high cost.
Right. And there's a classic story that I'm always reminded of when I see young Yankees players is that George Steinbrenner, the longtime Yankees owner, he wanted to trade in the 90s. He wanted to trade the likes of Derek Jeter, Andy Pettitte, Jorge Posada, and I think Mariano Rivera, because they all sort of came up through the minors at the same time. And he was in such a win now mentality that he wanted to trade away all of that young talent and get back the current hot stars. And luckily, enough people in the organization told him, no, don't do that. And so he didn't do it. But can you imagine the Yankees if they didn't have those four guys? I mean, those four guys were basically World Series winners for 3 years in a row. And they built teams around those guys. And so I think we're kind of starting to see another core group of young guys in New York being built. And if the Yankees aren't successful this year in the playoffs, I think next year and the year after that, we're going to start to see maybe a potential for another dynasty that's going to grow. Because there's a lot of really amazing young talent.
I mean, every decision is you know, puts you on a path to some sort of historical moment, right?
Right.
And so if Steinbrenner had proceeded with trading away, I mean, some of the greatest players of all time. You know, the Yankees in the 90s had, you know, one of the, if not the greatest closer of all time, Mariano Rivera, and they had Yankees captain, legend, and certainly Hall of Famer Derek Jeter on the same team. I mean, like, this is very dynastic. And so if you move those cornerstones and you try to replace them, you know, it's an exceedingly rare situation to assume that the replacements will be of the same caliber as guys like that. And so it's almost like a risk you can easily avoid just by accepting that you already have in-house what you're looking for.
Yeah, and just to sort of draw a parallel to what you were kind of alluding to earlier, that Yankees currently have one of the best closers in the game in Aroldis Chapman, and they've got one of the most amazing shortstops in the game in Didi Gregorius. So it's kind of a cool parallel to look at between Jeter and Rivera in the 90s and early 2000s. And here they are again with this amazing shortstop and this amazing closer. And that's not even to mention Aaron Judge, Giancarlo Stanton, like all these other studs they have on the team.
Yeah.
So it's it's a fun team to watch. I've always been kind of a Yankees hater because that's what you do if you're not a Yankees fan, because they've just been so successful. But if they're on TV and I've got nothing else going on, like I would love to watch the Yankees because they're fun to watch.
So I actually do not hate the Yankees at all. I like them just as much as I like all the other teams. I'm indifferent.
It's a big deal to be a star on the Yankees. I remember having a conversation with a buddy of mine a couple years ago. We were talking about the most prestigious positions in American sports, and we sort of basically came down to either being the quarterback for the Dallas Cowboys or being the shortstop for the New York Yankees. Like, there's nothing more prestigious than those two positions, in our opinions. And that's very debatable, but I think most people would agree that if you were to make a list, those two positions would be like top 5 or top 10.
So that's an interesting conversation because, does that mean most critical positions, or
not from? I mean, I guess most critical is. It depends on what year we're talking and what shape the team is in, because both of those teams have had down years in their history. But
right.
Just from a status and sort of celebrity standpoint, I think shortstop for the Yankees and quarterback for the Dallas Cowboys. Those are just like the epitome of the sports world, regardless of how those two teams are succeeding in a given year. Those positions are like the most heavily scrutinized and focused on.
I always thought that the pitchers and catchers were like of mission critical importance in games.
Sure.
And
that's why I said it's definitely up for debate. But
yeah, no, seriously. I think that these are, all the positions are, significant, right?
Yeah.
But I always think that the most stress is put on the pitchers and the catchers. Catchers' knees, pitchers' elbows. And so I think that and those two guys have to perform at such an executive level on every instance. They all do, but I just see that the pitcher, if the pitcher prevents hits, then the game's over, right? If the catcher can't throw guys out, the game's over. So I feel like there's a lot of stress put on those two guys, and then of course if the ball gets hit, then everybody else, the stress gets divvied out to the shortstop, first, second, third baseman, the outfielders, everybody else. But I always look at the pitchers and the catchers as being like so significant. Good stuff.
Speaking of rock stars, one of my favorite rock stars, Rafael Palmeiro.
Oh man, what a guy! This guy, he's 53, right? 53. He hits a home run with the Claiborne Railroaders, which is an American Association independent team from Texas. Now, he's still trying to break in to make a comeback with him at the major league level. And this is his first home run since July 30th, 2005, which was his last home run as a pro. Now, Rafael Palmeiro is interesting because he's one of a small list of guys that are 3,000 hit / 500 home run guys. And so, yeah, he has a little bit of like bad reputation from lying under oath about the use of steroids. But the fact that he's in his 50s and trying to make a comeback is, I don't care who you are, that's amazing. Like, it's incredible, actually, that you can still perform at that level at that age. I just think it's awesome. And if he came back, I don't know how old Satchel Paige was when he retired without looking at this data right now. But, who's the oldest ball player that play at the professional level? Can you think of it? I can't think of it outside of Satchel Paige. I feel like he's the guy.
Without Googling it, I think the oldest player was Jamie Moyer. I think he was 49.
Oh, yeah, Jamie Moyer.
That wasn't that long ago.
Right.
I think it was Jamie Moyer. I think he was 49. And if it's not Jamie Moyer, it's somebody else in that age range, like late 40s, maybe early 50s. 53 is really pushing it. I know that 53 isn't that far from 49, but in terms of sports, I think it's way further. And I think Rafael Palmeiro, who knows what's going to happen with this guy, but Tim Tebow's playing in the minors. I guess anything can happen at this point. um,
I mean, let's not bash on Tim Tebow. The guy
no,
is
no,
still in
but
sports. It's amazing.
yeah, that's what I'm saying. It's like if somebody has the perseverance, I guess they can do what they want. But and he's Palmeiro's obviously got a lot of great raw talent, and I haven't seen him in person, so I don't really know what he looks like, what shape he's in.
He's good enough shape to hit dingers. I'll tell you that much.
Yeah, I mean, hey, if you can hit a home run off of a real pitcher, that's a great accomplishment. Like not a lot of people can do that.
I was gonna say Jamie Moyer actually did retire when he was 49, and he holds the league record for the number of home runs allowed. He played for 25 years, man. You're gonna like rack up the home runs.
25 years.
522. 522 home runs is how many he allowed as a pitcher in his entire career.
Poor Jamie.
Regardless of what you think, you love him or hate him, I think it's pretty impressive that he's hitting home runs in any capacity, and he's still trying to make an effort to come back and play at the professional level. I think it's amazing. And honestly, seriously, I think that would be a very lucrative PR stunt by any team who puts him on. But that's just me looking at this from a business standpoint.
No, you're right. I mean, if you're a team that's way out of playoff contention and it's August and you're seeing your attendance numbers dip, I mean, talk to Palmeiro's agent. Like, what's the cheapest I can get for him? You know?
Oh man.
I assume the number will be pretty low, but I really don't know what Palmeiro's thinking, and I think he's already made his money. But it's interesting because a lot of the guys that have pitched a lot of the guys that have played into their 40s have been pitchers, and I think it's a different sort of conditioning for your body when you're playing once a week as opposed to playing every day. Even if Palmeiro is a designated hitter and he's not really playing the field, he would still have to be playing every day, in some sense.
Do you remember
so that would be a really trying thing on his body at the age of 53?
Right. Do you remember a movie called Mr. 3000?
Of course.
Bernie Mac. He comes.
Rest in peace, Bernie Mac.
Yeah, he's great, but he's retired, and they're looking at Hall of Fame numbers, and they're like looking at his numbers, and they realize he's three hits short of 3,000. That like someone made an error along the way, so he has to come back up and try to make up those numbers. I think it was 3 that he needed, or whatever the case.
Yeah, I think you're right.
Whatever the case, he had to come back and hit a few more to get the 3,000s. But a lot of people thought it was like a joke. They were like, dude, this is a joke. But then the management piece was really smart. They're like, yeah, but it's going to put people in the seats, which means ticket sales and merch sales and food sales and money. And so they were looking at it from a strictly PR standpoint. So like, just put up with him. And I just realized this is good for attendance, which is good for our wallets, our banks. Now, it's the hope that the Rafael Palmeiro thing wouldn't be seen the same way. But at the same time, I wouldn't be surprised if it was, because it's not completely dissimilar from that scenario in that movie, Mr. 3000. Great movie, by the way, if you haven't watched it. I liked it. I thought it was awesome. But that aside, I think if I were a team, and I needed like I'm seeing problems with the attendance numbers. Like, dude, if I'm the Orioles owner, I'd be like, let's get Rafael Palmeiro back on the Orioles. Let's do this. Put him on, see how well he can perform. People are gonna want to see Rafi hit again. I mean, 2005 wasn't that long ago. And so I don't know. I think about this as like from a marketing piece. If I needed some quick talent, I wouldn't put him on like a 5-year contract. It would just be like a seasonal thing. And I would see what he can do for us. It might be fun. Might be a fun experiment. So good stuff. Moving on. Some stuff about the card market. Ryan, you might, I don't know if you watched this auction or not, but on May 16th, 2018, a PSA 10 example of the 1993 SP Derek Jeter rookie card closed with 148 bids at $99,100. It's just incredible.
Insane.
Incredible.
Insane.
Upon further review, and I'm going to say this, but I want to mention that this is common, and it's not the fault of the auction houses or the sellers. It just happens with very high-end pieces. I've noticed pretty commonly. It's called auction shilling, and that's when the people that are consigning, the person that is consigning the item, might set up a dummy account and bid on the item to drive up price so that whoever is really wanting it can overbid, and that person who's listing it, that owns the card, the consignee, it makes more money. This happens a lot, unfortunately, with auctions run by reputable houses, and it's discouraged, and the houses discourage it. And I just want to make it a point that it's to my understanding never the fault of the houses themselves. This is just kind of a byproduct of really high-end listings. And it's also my understanding that most houses try to prevent this sort of thing from happening. But unfortunately, some of it still gets through, and it happens. So that being said, regardless of what happened with this Jeter, I still think the end price is mind-boggling. Like $99,100 for quite possibly the most condition-sensitive set to be produced in the 90s that houses one of the most important rookie cards of the era.
Do you know what the pop report is on this bad boy?
Oh, geez, let me pull it up. Wow.
You're so right about the condition. I mean, those early 90s SP cards are just insanely rough to keep in good shape.
Yeah, it's bad, man. You got foil that goes all the way to the edges. I mean, it's brutal. Ugh. It's just super brutal. And if you're a registry collector and you're looking to like build a, say, oh man, PSA 10 registry set of 93 SP baseball, like, good luck with that. You're going to need this card for your run. And if you've got a goal that's that ambitious, it's also the assumption that that goal can be coupled with a very significant income, because it's going to require hefty price tags on some of these guys. And then you got some of the commons that nobody grades, and so whenever you see them at high grade, they do really well. Okay, the pop report for 10s for PSA, 22 of them have been graded 10s out of a total of 13,686 of them. Okay, so that's a very, very, very tiny, tiny little needle in a haystack fraction. Most of them end up being most of them being 8s. And I'd be fine with an 8. If I got an 8, I'd be like, I'm good, one and done. Let's talk.
Absolutely.
Back in like 2014, I'd say like early fall, like September-ish. I was living in LA and I was working in Beverly Hills, and I remember on my lunch break, I was in the market for a 93 SP Jeter. I was looking at BGS 8.5, PSA 8 right in there. And they were just over, gosh, if I can remember correctly, like just over 100, 150 maybe right in there at the time. And I should have bought one because they've really come up. Granted, you can get PSA 8 now. Some sellers can close them at less than 300. So, I mean, it's a loss for me now because I had an opportunity to get them at much more affordable price tag. But they're available. Currently, there are well over 8,000 8s out there. I'm never going to be in a situation where I absolutely have to have a 10. Like, right. I just can find a lot of better uses of my money. Good stuff, man. I think that's a good point to talk about. It's a significant sale. A very significant sale. Huge sale.
Huge sale.
Huge.
Huge.
It's so big. And so moving on. This is, I don't know. Did you hear about this next point, Ryan, at all?
I hadn't heard about it until you brought it up, so I'm curious to see what you have to say about it.
Sure. The folks at Memory Lane Auctions, they acquired and listed the original Polaroid. Okay, get this. The original Polaroid picture used for the 1989 Upper Deck Ken Griffey Jr. rookie card. I mean, just incredible piece of Americana. One of the most iconic pieces of baseball memorabilia ever made, I would say. It sells for $13,887.60. Can I just, take the giant mouthful and just say it sold for $14,000? Okay, here's interesting. Check this out. The question here becomes, was that a good deal?
It's there's all sorts of different facets of this hobby, and I know that original photographs are a big deal to a lot of people.
Mm.
They're not necessarily a big deal to me, and especially an original photograph from 1989. If you were talking about an original proof from like the 50s or 60s, then you would spark my interest. 1989 is just not that long ago to me, and the original Polaroid. I mean, I know it's very special and it's rare, and I'm sure a Griffey collector is absolutely in love with it right now. But I don't think it's worth that price point. What do you think?
Oh, this is where we're going to disagree.
Okay.
Okay, here's the thing. When I think of the most iconic rookie cards, I think the Ken Griffey Jr. 89 Upper Deck is hands down, without a doubt, the most iconic baseball card of my generation. Okay? I mean, this is significant, huge. I mean, it's card number 1 in Upper Deck's inaugural release. And he has since become one of the greatest hitters of all time in the Hall of Fame. And it's still, till this day, people buy those boxes to hope to pull the Griffey card. Like,
yes, they do. Yes,
89
they do.
Upper Deck packs still sell because of this card. Still.
Yep.
And so I honestly think that this card, this picture at $14K right now is a good price, because it was a good decision. I won't say good price because it's sold for what it's valued at right now presently. It's sold for $13,887.60. It's worth $13,887.60. In the future, as time passes, our kids grow up, they have kids, they grow up, they have kids, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. I believe that this particular picture is going to continue to appreciate with time, because it's such an iconic piece of American history, baseball history, sports collecting history, hobby history, everything. It's such a big piece of the American heritage, the fabric of American history. And I honestly feel like, had I known and had I had extra cash, I probably would have wanted to buy this myself.
Oh, interesting.
It's such a big piece, because the 89 Upper Deck is such an iconic card. And having the original picture, that, by the way, if you don't know this already, the Polaroid shows the original logo that he for the team he played for before he actually made the majors. I just think that that's so cool. I mean, that is really, really cool stuff. And I knew about that fact before, but I'd never seen the original photograph. So seeing this is like, oh, so that's what it was. And I really like that. I mean, it's a young shot of Griffey, and it's just a classic. Everything about this card is very classic to me. I really like it a lot.
One thing I find kind of funny is like, I think of Polaroid as a very consumer grade form of photography.
Mm-hmm.
And it's obviously not really around anymore. I think maybe a few hipsters might still take Polaroids, but I think it's just funny that Upper Deck, I know they were kind of a ragtag company back then, but to have it on a Polaroid is like, you think it would be a more professional photographic piece.
Yeah, geez, man, why don't you pull out your iPhone and take a photo back then? I mean, what the heck?
No. I know like 1989 things were completely different, but I'm sure Topps had their act together in a photography sense, and I don't know.
But if you look at the final product, the quality is exceptional.
Oh yeah, clear. No, it's great, and it's obviously very iconic, but
it's not for you. Just saying. He's like, it's a great photo. I'd just rather spend my money on something else. You know what I'm saying?
$14K is a really crazy amount of money to spend on a lot of things, specifically a picture. But what about $25K? Would you drop that on a guy that's only played 2 months in the MLB?
Speaking of big purchases, now, if I'm spending $14,000 on a picture, I probably wouldn't have any problem spending $35,000 on a baseball card. Recently, there have been 2 big sales of Shohei Ohtani Bowman Chrome Red Refractor autographs. They're number to 5. Now, first time the one surfaced, it closed at like $55,000, but the seller had a problem closing the deal with the buyers. I guess there were a lot of illegitimate bids, so we ended up listing with Propstein. Propstein sold the the card sold with Propstein for 30,000, and then another one was listed, a Red Refractor, around the same time, and the second one sold for just over $35,000. Okay, now just keep those numbers in mind. $35,000 is what you can expect to get on the open market right now for 2018 Bowman Chrome Red Refractor Autos, number to 5, Shohei Ohtani rookie cards. Okay, huge. Blowout Cards has a bounty out for $100,000 for the Superfractor, which apparently has not yet been pulled after all these weeks of seeing endless numbers of Shohei Ohtani cards being listed on eBay. They have now extended the bounty opportunities to include 2 more cards at $25,000 each. And here are the 2 cards. Blue Refractor Auto Kenji autograph. That means he signed his name in Japanese. And which, to my knowledge, only one has been found. It's really incredible stuff. And the Red Refractor Auto, number to 5. So just to be clear here, if I pull the Red Refractor Auto to 5, one of the other 3 examples, I can A, put it on the open market and expect to get 30K plus up to 35,000 because those are the 2 sales we've seen so far. Or I can option it off, give it to Blowout Cards for $25,000. Like that, I'm not a mathematician, but I would say that the answer is pretty darn clear as to which one's going to yield the higher returns. I almost feel like if I were Blowout, I'd be like, I'll give you 40K because I'd want you to give it to me instead of listing it yourself, and you'd make $5,000 more over the highest price to expect for that card on the open market.
Absolutely. I mean, if I were really trying to buy that card, I would be more aggressive than Blowout Cards is being right now, especially considering we are at the peak of Ohtani craze.
Mm-hmm.
We might be peaking more. I mean, he just continues to perform, so I really don't know when the actual peak is, but it seems like a peak right now to me, at least from a hobby standpoint, just because we have these releases coming out that sort of coincide with his success in the majors. I would agree. I think if I were trying to buy that card from the lucky person that actually pulls it, I would be much more aggressive with my price.
Yeah, I mean, the 25K might work for the Kanji signature because we don't have a recorded sale yet of that card, at least not to my knowledge.
Right.
And that might make sense. But, I mean, Kanji we don't know if there's more than one of them.
Yeah, that was my question. My next question is, has Topps released anything like that? Like, have they said that he signed a certain amount in Japanese and a certain amount in English?
To my knowledge, no, but I haven't read every page of, published work on Google.
You haven't?
on this card. So I don't know. I don't know I don't even know how to benchmark a price point for valuation for that card, because if it's a 1 of 1, but it's not stated, it's just like, I'm going to sign all of these except for one. I'm going to sign one of them in Japanese, and that's it. Then the Kanji Auto signature, that card, the blue auto, would be maybe
huge.
It'd be up there with the Superfractor, man.
Yeah, that would be huge.
And in that case, worth way more than $25,000. And so, again, if I were running the bounties, I would be way more aggressive with what I'm willing to pay out for these cards. Knowing that the Red Refractor sold for above 35K, I would be offering more than 35K for them. But as a business, I get you got to turn a profit. I totally understand that, and I respect it. But this is public knowledge. Sale records are public knowledge on eBay. So I just would try to make it a point to reputable firm like Blowout Cards. I'd be wanting to give collectors and people who pull these cards a significant incentive to come to me to transact. And the only way for me to do that is to offer, I think, more than what they're going for online. And it sounds weird from a business perspective because it's not really how you make money. You always buy less and then turn it around. So, Ryan, thoughts?
No, I agree. I mean, from a business perspective, offering up a lot without really knowing what the future holds for this player, it's probably not wise. But at the same time, he's sort of a once in a lifetime player, and he's got 2 months of baseball under his belt, and he's sort of proven himself at this point to most people, whether you're in the hobby or, sports journalists. Like, I think most people have bought into Shohei Ohtani.
Mm-hmm.
So if it were me and I were lucky enough to pull the superfractor, whatever it may be, I think I would sit on it, because 35K might seem like a joke in like 2 years or 3 years.
I mean, I wish that we could tell what's going to happen in the future.
Yeah.
Right? Like, I really would. I think I'd be making a lot more money.
Yeah.
if I knew what was going to happen in the
in
market, right? Right now is a very good time for the hobby. Everybody's buying. Blowouts has these bounties going on. It's great for marketing, great for sales, great for business.
I mean, I think we both know each other's buying habits, and we both know that we don't really buy a lot of wax in general.
Right.
But I think you've heard from me in the past couple months, I've been creeping around my local Targets, looking for the Bowman, looking for the Topps Heritage, because I sort of have the Ohtani bug, and like it's kind of a crazy phenom right now, and I haven't really felt this way in the hobby since the Harper Strasburg Trout era,
right.
which doesn't seem that long ago, but it is kind of a long time ago.
Yeah, those are good days, man. I bought 2 packs of hangers of
nice
2018 Bowman, and I haven't opened them yet.
Ooh, so are you saying
I could have the superfractor?
You have the superfractor in hand?
How rad would it be is if I open them on film and I pull the superfractor and I'm like, yeah, I'm just going to sit on it. I probably would too, by the way. I'd sit in it to get great and be done with it. I'd be like, I'm just going to keep it. Oh, it came back a 9 anyway. Sorry. Oh, crap. Because, we have that parameter that it has to be a 9.5 by a certain date. Those parameters still exist. So I'd almost be like, hey, BGS, can you grade this down to a 9? Just
the first time in history they've been asked to.
Right, to degrade. Let's staple a 20.
Ohtani is setting records in more ways than you could even imagine.
No, right. Seriously, right? That way. Anyway, that concludes. That kind of covers our podcast for today. I think it was fun to talk about some of these points. It's cool to see these guys that are coming up, that are new, being developed in-house. It's awesome to see old fellas come back and try to return. Rafael Palmeiro. I love seeing big sales in the market. It's great to see a Jeter sell for almost $100,000. It's awesome to see original Polaroid of that 89 Upper Deck Griffey sale. It's so cool. And I think that the bounties that Blowout are offering is very smart marketing. I think it's cool. I like it. So Ryan Daly, thank you for joining us today on this podcast. I really appreciate it, bud, for hanging out with us and chatting.
Thanks, man. It's always fun. And just one last thing before I leave you. The Angels came from behind to beat Toronto tonight. All thanks to one Shohei Ohtani. So
I love it.
Just going to leave you with that.
Right. I just want to remind everybody to share how you feel about these podcasts by leaving us a comment below, either on the blog or on YouTube. I love comments on the blog. Let us know how you feel. Do you love these podcasts? Do you not love them? Are you indifferent? I like them myself, and I think Ryan, at least he makes a pretty good case. I think he pretends. He makes me feel like he loves them, and I think that's cool. Thanks for pretending, Ryan.
You're welcome, man. I'll continue to pretend.
Thank you. Thank you for tuning into Radicards.com on the Radicards podcast. And until next time, enjoy collecting.
If you like this content, please subscribe. Thank you. Enjoy collecting.